I never imagined the day would come when the truth would burst into my living room like a storm I couldn't stop. It started off like any other quiet afternoon. The sun was soft through the curtains, and the house was unusually calm. I was supposed to be alone, just a few hours of peace before my husband came home. But what happened in those few hours changed everything. And the person I was with? My son's friend. Yes, the same boy who had been part of our family dinners, birthday parties, and late-night game nights, the one I watched grow up. Before you jump to conclusions, let me take you back a little. This story isn't about recklessness or shallow decisions. It's about loneliness, silence, and emotional needs that got buried under years of marriage and responsibility. My husband and I weren't in a good place. We hadn't been for a long time. We talked less, argued more, and the love that once held us together felt distant. I didn't even realize how much I missed being seen, heard, and truly understood until someone finally did. And it wasn't someone I expected. He was 22, respectful, and always kind, the type of young man any parent would feel comfortable having around. My son had brought him home countless times, and over the years, he had become almost like family. I never looked at him twice. Not until one day, when a conversation that started in the kitchen turned deeper than it should have. It wasn't planned. There was no intention to cross any lines. But somehow, in the quiet space where no one was paying attention, a connection began to form. He listened to me in a way my husband hadn't in years. He asked how I was, not just in the polite way people do, but as if he truly wanted to know. And I answered. For the first time in a long time, I let my guard down. What started as simple words became lingering eye contact, small moments, and eventually, something we couldn't take back. I didn't think anyone would find out, not yet, at least. We were careful. We had to be. But then the unthinkable happened. The front door opened. And in that instant, my entire world stopped. I heard his footsteps before I saw him. My husband, home early. The look on his face when he walked in, when he saw us together, that's something I'll never forget. Time stood still. I froze. So did he. And the boy, my son's friend, just looked down, silent, knowing everything was about to come crashing down. What happened next? I still struggle to talk about it. But if you've ever wondered what happens when secrets come to light, when one mistake threatens to destroy everything you've built, then keep watching. Because this is not just a story about infidelity. It's about consequences. Choices. And what happens when love disappears, but temptation doesn't. My husband didn't say a word at first. He just stood there, staring at us, not blinking, not moving. I could see the disbelief in his eyes, like he was trying to make sense of something that couldn't possibly be real. The silence in that moment was louder than any argument we'd ever had. My heart pounded so hard I could barely breathe. I wanted to speak, to explain, to do something, but no words came out. And the boy, he just slowly stepped back, guilt written all over his face. It was like time had slowed down, but inside me, everything was moving too fast. My thoughts were racing, trying to figure out how we had gotten to this point. A few months ago, I was a woman just going through the motions, cooking meals, managing the house, pretending everything was fine. My husband was always busy. Long hours at work, always on his phone when he was home, barely noticing when I left the room or sat next to him. We stopped laughing together. We stopped being us. Then came those small, accidental moments with my son's friend. Helping him with a project. Talking about life. He would ask how I was feeling. He'd sit with me longer than he had to. And before I realized what was happening, I started looking forward to those moments. They gave me something I hadn't felt in a long time: attention, appreciation, warmth. I didn't plan for any of this. I didn't expect my life to unravel like this. Now, standing in that living room, I could feel everything slipping through my hands. My marriage. My role as a mother. The trust one had taken for granted. I didn't know if my son was home. I didn't even know if he knew what had just happened. All I knew was that the man I'd been married to for 18 years had just witnessed something that would change us forever. He finally spoke. Just one sentence. A cold, steady voice that shook me more than if he had yelled. "So this is what you've been doing?" That question hit like a punch in the chest. I couldn't answer. I didn't even know how to begin. And even if I tried, would he believe me? Could he ever forgive me? I didn't have those answers then. I still don't. But I do know that from that moment forward, nothing in our lives would ever be the same again. Didn't wait for my response. After asking that one painful question, he turned around and walked out of the house. The front door slammed behind him so hard, it echoed through the walls. I stood there frozen, still trying to convince myself this wasn't real. My son's friend, he just looked at me, eyes wide with panic, unsure of what to say or do. He whispered, "I should go," and I nodded without looking at him. I couldn't even face him in that moment. I just needed air. I needed to think. I went to the kitchen and sat down at the table, where just a few weeks ago my husband and I had sat across from each other, barely exchanging more than a few words. I remembered how I had watched him scroll on his phone while I tried to talk about our son, school issues, plans for our anniversary that never happened. We were disconnected. But I never imagined things would fall apart this way. Later that evening, my son came home. He knew something was off immediately. I told him his dad had left after an argument. I couldn't bring myself to say more. But deep down, I knew it wouldn't stay a secret. The look on my husband's face earlier made it clear, this wasn't going to just disappear. And the worst part? I didn't even know if I wanted it to. That confused me more than anything else. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about how things started going wrong between us. It wasn't just one thing. It was a slow fade. A lack of communication. The quiet resentment that builds up when two people stop fighting for each other. And then there was guilt, a heavy, choking kind. Not just because of what I'd done, but because I hadn't realized how far I had drifted from the person I used to be. The next day, I tried calling my husband. No answer. I messaged. Nothing. Then I checked with a mutual friend and found out he hadn't gone to work either. That's when I really started to panic. Where was he? What was he thinking? Was he going to tell our son? Was he going to leave me without a word? And in all of that fear, there was one more question I couldn't escape. Was this really the end of our marriage, or just the beginning of a storm we had no idea how to survive? 2 days passed and still no word from him. I was going out of my mind, checking my phone every few minutes, barely able to function. My son noticed. He asked where his dad was, why he wasn't answering calls, and why I looked like I hadn't slept in days. I gave the same answer each time, he just needs some space. But I knew that space was only growing wider by the hour. And with every second of silence, the guilt and fear inside me kept getting louder. Then came the moment I was dreading, a message. Just a short, cold text from my husband that said, "We need to talk. Tonight." Don't lie. My hands were shaking as I read it. I didn't know what he'd decided, but his words told me he wasn't just angry, he was hurt. Deeply. The kind of hurt that leaves scars no apology can fix. I spent the entire day pacing, thinking about what I would say, what I could say to make him understand. I rehearsed the truth in my head, over and over, but every version still sounded like betrayal. By the time evening came, the house felt different. Still. Heavy. My son was out, thankfully, and I waited alone in the living room. I didn't even hear the door open. I just looked up and there he was, standing in the doorway, staring at me with eyes that were no longer soft or familiar. I tried to speak, but he held up his hand, stopping me. "I want the truth," he said, voice calm but full of quiet rage. How long has this been going on? I told him everything. The truth, without filters. How it started, how far it went, how ashamed I felt. I didn't beg, I didn't try to twist the story. I owed him at least that much honesty. But with every word, I could see him crumbling inside, like each detail was a new crack in what we once had. Then he asked something I didn't expect. Did you ever think about what this would do to our son? That question hit harder than anything. I had thought about it, but not enough. I had been selfish. Caught up in emotions I couldn't control, without seeing the damage it could bring. And now, everything was hanging by a thread. He didn't yell. He didn't cry. He just stood there, staring at me like he was trying to figure out whether the woman he once loved still existed at all. He didn't stay long that night. After I told him everything, he walked out again, no arguments, no decisions, just silence. That kind of silence is worse than shouting. It lingers, makes you second-guess every breath. I sat there for hours, thinking it was over, thinking nothing else could possibly make it worse. But I was wrong. The worst part was still waiting. The next morning, I got a call from my son's school. I could barely hear the voice on the other end over the pounding in my chest. The principal's tone was serious. She said my son had gotten into a fight. That he'd lashed out at another student and stormed off campus. I dropped everything and drove straight there, heart racing. I didn't even stop to think about what this might be connected to. But when I walked into the office and saw his face, red, swollen eyes, hands clenched, I knew. He knew. Somehow, he knew. We barely made it to the car before he exploded. How could you? He shouted, slamming the door behind him. With him? He was my friend. My best friend. I felt like I couldn't breathe. I wanted to speak, but what could I say? He wasn't a little boy anymore. He didn't want excuses. He wanted to know why the person he looked up to, the one he trusted most, had crossed a line that couldn't be undone. And that's when the second blow hit me. He hadn't heard it from his dad. He'd seen a message. On his friend's phone. A stupid, careless message I thought had been deleted. It all made sense now. That sudden shift in his behavior the last couple of days. The distance. The anger. I had thought I was managing the fallout. I wasn't. It was already spreading. He didn't say another word on the drive home. Just sat there, staring out the window, jaw tight, eyes wet. When we pulled into the driveway, he got out without looking at me and walked inside. That silence, the way he didn't even want to be near me, that hurt more than anything. It wasn't just my husband I'd lost. My own son looked at me like I was a stranger. And then, just when I thought things couldn't unravel any further, my phone lit up with a message from an unknown number. You think this is over? It's not. No name. No context. Just that one sentence. At first, I thought it might be my husband. Or maybe even the boy, my son's friend, reaching out. But something about the tone felt different. Cold. Almost threatening. My stomach dropped. Who else knew? How far had this gone? Had someone been watching, listening, waiting to use it against me? The affair was no longer just a private mistake. It was becoming something darker, something I couldn't control. And the storm hadn't even hit yet. I stared at that message on my phone for a long time. My hands were trembling, and my thoughts raced in every direction. I wanted to believe it was just someone playing a cruel joke, but deep down, I knew better. I could feel it. This wasn't over. Someone out there knew more than they should, and they weren't going to let me move on quietly. I finally decided to call the number. It rang once, then disconnected. I tried again. Same thing. My heart dropped. Whoever it was didn't want to talk, they just wanted to scare me. And it was working. That evening, my husband came home. For the first time in days, We sat face to face, no running, no silence. Just two broken people trying to figure out what was left. He asked me everything again, not because he didn't believe me, but because he needed to hear it in a different way. Slower. Raw. We cried. We yelled. Then cried again. There was no instant forgiveness, no magical fix, but he said something that shocked me. I don't know if I can forget this, he whispered, voice shaking. But I also don't know if I can walk away. I didn't expect that. I thought he'd already made his choice. But somewhere deep in all the pain, there was still a piece of love left between us. Small. Wounded. But there. We both agreed on one thing: we needed to protect our son. No matter what. So we sat him down that night and had the hardest conversation of our lives. He didn't say much, but he listened. And when it was over, he walked out of the room. That hurt more than any words could have. But I understood. He needed time. Later that night, I got another message from the same number. This time, it had a photo. A blurry picture of me and my son's friend, taken weeks ago, when we thought we were being careful. It wasn't just a threat anymore. It was blackmail. Then came the twist I never saw coming. I recognized the angle of the photo. The furniture. The lighting. My heart nearly stopped. It had been taken inside our house. Which meant someone had been watching. Not from the outside. From within. I felt sick. The only people who had been in that space were family and close friends. And that's when a cold realization hit me. My son's friend, the one I had gotten too close to, wasn't the only one I'd let into our lives. There had been someone else. Someone quiet. Always around, always observing. My husband's younger cousin, who had been staying with us for a while during school. Tech savvy. Always on his phone. Always too quiet. And now I knew. This wasn't just about betrayal. It was about someone turning our biggest secret into a weapon. And he was just getting started. The moment it all came together in my mind, I felt this strange mix of fear and anger. I couldn't believe it. My husband's cousin, who had lived under our roof, shared our meals, laughed with our son, had been spying on us the whole time. I remembered how he always seemed to be around, how he'd randomly disappear during quiet moments, how he always had an excuse to borrow someone's device or linger nearby. He must have installed a small camera or even used one of his own phones. It made my skin crawl. I didn't tell my husband right away. I wanted to be sure. That night, I searched every inch of the living room, and in one of the vents, tucked inside a barely visible corner, I found it, a small phone with the screen blacked out. Hidden. Recording. My hands shook as I held it. All the pieces fell into place. This wasn't just a personal mistake anymore. It had turned into something much darker. When I finally showed him, my husband didn't explode. He was silent for a long time, just staring at the device like it was something poisonous. We both knew what this meant. Whatever pain we'd gone through, whatever betrayal we'd faced, this was something no one deserved. Someone had invaded our lives on a different level, manipulating pain for control. It wasn't just about revenge. It was about power. We reported it. Quietly. No public drama. No police showing up at the house. We didn't want our son dragged into something worse. But action was taken. His cousin was confronted by the family. The footage was deleted. The device was handed over. And the cousin, he disappeared from our lives for good. No more games. No more messages. Just silence again, but this time, the kind we could breathe in. Things didn't magically go back to normal after that. My husband and I started therapy. Separately at first, then together. We talked about years of silence, pain, and how far we'd drifted before things exploded. It was hard, exhausting even, but it was real. We decided to try again, not for the image of a perfect marriage, but because we both still wanted something worth saving. My son? He needed time. But slowly, he came back to me. He saw how much I was trying. He saw the work I was putting in to repair the damage I'd done. It wasn't easy, but we started finding each other again in small ways, quiet talks, long drives, just being present. Looking back, it's strange how one moment can flip everything upside down. A single choice, a broken boundary, a silent camera in a vent. But even after the lies, the betrayal, and the exposure, I've learned something that I hold on to now. Truth has a way of surfacing, no matter how buried it is. And healing, real healing, only begins when you stop running from the truth and start facing the parts of yourself that hurt the most. 29.